Lesson 2 for July 6 through to 12, Blueprint for a Better World, read by Dr. Percy Harold. Friday, July 12. There is nothing, Ellen White writes in Patriarchs and Prophets, page 530 and 531, after their recognition of the claims of God, that more distinguishes the laws given by Moses than the liberal, tender, and hospitable spirit enjoined toward the poor. Although God had promised greatly to bless his people, it was not his design that poverty should be wholly unknown among them. He declared that the poor should never cease out of the land. There would ever be those among his people who would call into exercise their sympathy, tenderness, and benevolence. Then, as now, persons were subject to misfortune, sickness, and loss of property. Yet, so long as they followed the instruction given by God, there were no beggars among them, neither any who suffered for food, and pages 534 and 535. These regulations were designed to bless the rich no less than the poor. They would restrain avarice and disposition for self-exaltation, and would cultivate a noble spirit of benevolence, and by fostering goodwill and confidence between all classes, they would promote social order, the stability of government. We are all woven together in a great web of humanity, and whatever we can do to benefit and uplift others will reflect in blessing upon ourselves." End of quote. And that brings us to our 3 discussion questions for this week. 1. Of the blueprint God gave to Moses and the Israelites for the kind of society they were to establish, what feature, law, or regulation most catches your attention, whether it be specifically mentioned in this week's study or from your wider reading? 2. Why do you think God seems so focused on the most vulnerable in the laws he gave to his people? 3. How should we understand and relate to these laws today? How do we choose which of these laws are applicable and relevant to us today? What is the most important thing we can learn from these detailed instructions as to how the Israelites were to order their society and lives? And to summarize this week's lesson, God heard the cries of the suffering people of Israel in Egypt and intervened to rescue them. He sought to build a special covenant relationship with them and to work with them to establish a new society that would be a blessing to all, even those often forgotten, marginalized, and vulnerable. Inside Story. Our mission story this week is titled Man with a Crooked Stick, and it's by Wilson Miasapogo. Indian villagers faced constant trouble from an intruding tiger. The wild animal crept by night into Gudam Madhavaram, a remote village with no electricity on a mountainside in India's Andhra Pradesh state. The villagers, dependent upon goats, cows and bulls to produce milk and cultivate crops for their rich landowners, watched in despair as their animals were devoured one by one. They prayed to their gods for protection, but nothing happened. One day, a tall white man with a crooked stick arrived on horseback. He spoke the local Telugu language, and the villagers stared at his crooked stick. When the stick coughed, animals went to sleep, permanently. The villagers learned that the man was an American named Dr. Theodore R. Flays. He had opened a small hospital in Nusvid, 30 miles or 50 kilometres away from the village, and a training school for workers in Narsapurm, 110 miles or 180 kilometres away. When he wanted to rest from his work, he hunted on their mountain. He donated the game to the villagers. On Saturdays, he sat in the shade of a village tree, removed his coat, and sang songs. When the villagers asked what he was singing, he explained that he was worshipping the Creator God. "We want to see the Creator God," the villagers said. The white man opened a black book and read aloud about the Creator God. As the tiger problem grew, the village elders won a promise from the white man to help. They tied a goat to a tree trunk in the village centre. In the branches they built a platform where the white man could sleep. That night they tied a rope to his leg and retreated to their huts to keep watch. In the night's darkness, a large tiger approached. The watching villagers jerked the string, waking up the white man. He caused his crooked stick to cough. The tiger, however, was only wounded and fled. Later the tiger returned, was shot, and fled again. After several attempts, the tiger was shot dead. After that, the friendship between Dr. Flays and the villagers grew greatly, and a small Seventh-day Adventist congregation was established. One of the first converts, a young man who had helped tie the goat to the tree and kept watch at night, was Sunder Rayo, my father, says the writer. He was baptized in 1955. Today, Gudum Madravan is an Adventist village. It has produced 40 pastors and Bible workers and many educators and health professionals. On Saturdays, the whole village comes to a halt to worship the Creator God. Wilson Mir-Sapogo, left, is Executive Secretary of the Seventh-day Adventist Church's Southern Asia Division, whose territory includes India. Dr. Theodore R. Flays was a medical missionary who headed the Adventist World Church's medical work from 1947 until his retirement in 1966. He died in 1977 at the age of 80. You have been listening to a reading of the Adult Sabbath School Bible Study Guide by Dr. Percy Harold from Queensland, Australia. This service is brought to you by Hope Channel, the Sabbath School Department, and Christian Services for the Blind. Remember, God is always faithful.